registering new voters over the last several months, Pennsylvania and Florida. And so I think if that bears out, then the president, he may not win by a lot, but he'll win.
That's it for now. More in an hour.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to the AA. For our most competitive van insurance, go to the aa.ie.
Blustery tonight with rain in Ulster gradually easing, a mix of clear spells and scattered showers elsewhere. Lowest temperatures of 1 to 4 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette. Proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow.
This is News Talk.
Well, a bumper weekend of sport to be dissected this evening. On the GAA front, Enda McGinley is with us. He'll be talking football. Mickey Hart coming under pressure. Quite a few big names in the game calling for his tenure to come to an end. Donegal are through, of course. Cavan shocked him on him. We'll talk to Enda around 7:30 or so. We will have more in-depth hurling tomorrow, but we will bring you some Kieran Carey and Tommy Walsh this evening. On the football show then, Pat and Evan, Brian Kerr coming your way. Pick your poison, United fans, 53106, be it the lack of manly men and leaders in the dressing room or tactical shortcomings. Everyone at this stage can agree that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is coming under pressure. But then who isn't? Say Andy Farrell and Ireland. Monday Night Rugby coming your way at 8 o'clock. 53106 is the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. Richie McCormack, hello to you.
Joe, how are you? You well?
Very well. And finally, long overdue, he's here to right some wrongs, to hold court. Come at him, radio listeners. 53106. Eoin Sheahan, you're very welcome. Hello.
Evening, Joe. Evening, Richie. How are things?
All good. Hell of a weekend. Where do you want to start, Eoin? What grabbed you?
Oh, what grabbed me? The mud wrestling in Ballybofey was the thing that grabbed me yesterday. Like one of these beautiful weekends where you could sit at your couch, at the television all weekend long, guilt-free, and watch everything unfold. And there is a level of guilt-freeness about these sorts of games that we see, these mud-filled games that we see usually in February. You know, the sort of conditions where if you brave them, you tend to feel very, very good about yourself. And like I think, I wish I was there will be a phrase that is uttered by a lot of GAA fans over these next few weeks. I don't think too many of them will actually be saying that honestly at yesterday and seeing the chaos that was unfolding weather-wise at the game. Like going to a game in those sort of conditions is usually something you do in the Allianz League. You'll tell all your friends about afterwards because you'll come across as a genuine fan. But I'm not sure how many people actually want to be at these sorts of games. So I think from the safety of everybody's home was almost the best way to experience it all yesterday.
Yeah, you know, it's funny with the weather, especially in these provincial grounds, they just add it adds a degree of jeopardy to the whole thing. You look at the Tyrone goal. You know, that dodgy bounce from keeper to Donegal player, and it's going to throw in that degree of chaos. And it's not like at the start of the Allianz League where you're saying, oh, well, at least the weather will improve as we get to the latter stages. The opposite's going to happen to here. I suppose the one thing is Croke Park turf will stand up better to it. But yesterday, I mean, like, it was amazing to watch. Championship, knockout, so much on the line, and being played in a complete mud bath, as you say. I did think Donegal were absolutely the better team throughout. You know, that goal gave Tyrone a false handle of the game, really. I just didn't feel they were ever quite in it. I don't know what you made of it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like, the mad thing about the mistake for the goal is that is the very typical conditions moment to see in a game like that. But also in the game, we saw the Donegal goal that you mentioned, one of the most sublime pieces of skill you're ever likely to see from a goalkeeper. That, like, we had the ridiculous from an unbelievably talented footballer like Eoin Vaughan Gallagher, but we also had the sublime coming from his own goalkeeper as well. And it is just this chaos that we are going to see because nobody's holding back basically. Everybody's going for this gung-ho and they're all at the peak of their powers, but it's just happening in an awful environment, which is this cocktail of a setup that we just haven't seen before. I agree with you, Donegal were the better team, I thought, yesterday, and the questions will surround Mickey Hart in the aftermath of yesterday. But strangely, I actually feel yesterday's not really the day with which we should be judging Mickey Hart. It's probably previous seasons, and I feel a little bit sorry for him that so many questions are being asked over the last 24 hours, because in fairness, nobody's getting a fair crack at this season.
Yeah, I totally agree in that. I was quite surprised at, Colin O'Rourke said it straight away afterwards on television. Richie said, yeah, look, it's time for a fresh voice. Didn't say who that fresh voice would be. Didn't expand really on what he had seen in this 70 minutes that made it so clear that this was the time to pull the plug on the Hart tenure. And then Pat Spillane said it as well on the Sunday game. He doubled down on it. I just, like, this year of all years, that's 70 minutes. And, he's done reasonably well in the last couple of years. The man has a track record of bringing talented players through. I mean, there is an argument. 18 years has been a hell of a stint. I get the overall argument. But as to Eoin's point, geez, I'm not sure that's the evidence yesterday on which to say it's definitely over for Hart and Tyrone.
Yeah, and yesterday's game is probably as much of an argument for there should have been a backdoor in the football championship as there is in the hurling championship, because we are seeing so many of these sides go after one game, and probably, I know they weren't the better side, but ultimately they don't deserve to have their championship ended after just 70 minutes in the muck in Ballybuffet. And as you mentioned there, Joe, it's like, it's very hard. Like, I would never be the biggest Mickey Hart fan in the world. I'll put that out in the line right there and now. But to judge a man's tenure this year on what is a freakish championship, a freakish year in terms of the season as a whole, on 70 minutes of football in dire conditions, in conditions they wouldn't necessarily be used to playing championship football in, when they're missing as well Colin McShane and a couple others as well. Like, it's not exactly the best 70 minutes, the best 20 to judge Mickey Hart on. If ever there was somebody deserving of another season, he could be any manager this year, because you can't just judge in GEA terms how somebody has performed in terms of one or two games in squally weather in the middle of October and November.
We'll talk to Enda McGinley this hour. Obviously, he worked under Mickey Hart for a long time, won 3 All-Irelands under him, see what he makes of it, and we'll get the word from Tyrone and see what they're saying up there. Eoin Sheahan, Roy Keane was in virtuoso form yesterday. It was a time for manly men. It was a time for leaders. This is Roy Keane rubbing his hands. He made damn sure the direction of that conversation post-match with Jamie Redknapp and Tim Cahill did not go near things like tactics. That's not important. We're not here to break down the game. We're not here to explain what happened. We don't want to know why Arsenal's midfield 2 outdid United's 4. That's irrelevant. This is about manhood, Eoin. The size of your manhood, Eoin.
And guess who can't teach you that? The manager, who just happens to be quite a close confidant of Roy Keane. And the silence that builds up around these matches is quite extraordinary when something bad happens to Manchester United and Roy Keane is sitting there. For the record, I think Sky Sports should ensure that Roy Keane is sitting there after every single Manchester United game, because it is a nightmare because he's just better than everybody else in these sorts of scenarios. And the manhood question is obviously an incredibly harsh appraisal of Manchester United, given there has to have been surely some blame laid at the door of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who rightfully got praised to the nth degree after the diamond, after the masterclass against Leipzig last week. The same blame has to go to him for setting up in a similar-ish system against a very different opposition. It was extraordinary that he did gloss over that, and himself and Tim Cahill obviously at loggerheads immediately afterwards, but I'm not sure they actually disagreed that much. No. I think Roy Keane did compare Thomas Partey to possibly Patrick Vieira in his comments afterwards. So he was pretty glowing in his praise of Arsenal. But, as you say, it just did come back to the United players not wanting it quite as much, nothing else.
It was amazing TV, Rich. I know you maybe didn't catch it, but there was just... Roy Keane is brilliant at this now. I mean, he's just so good. He knows what he's doing. At one point, Tim Cahill was trying to talk about Arteta doing quite a good job and learning from defeats and progressing. This morning, And he talked about how one of the players had said they really enjoyed playing their football and learning from Mikel. And Roy said, yeah, that's not respect, calling him Mikel. You call him Gaffer. And Dave Jones, the presenter, said, oh, surely that's just modern football. No. Roy said, no, it's about respect. And Jamie Redknapp just exploded laughing and said to Roy, how do you do this with a straight face?
That's the thing. And this cropped up at the World Cup, I think, was it in Russia 2 years ago, where there is an element, and Ian Wright alluded to it, that there is something of a degree of performance about this from Keane, in that if you want to know his true opinions, you probably just have to be Roy Keane himself, because I don't think he's ever actually going to give you the full, breakdown of what he thinks Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's job is at Manchester United or others elsewhere, etc. But, Ian Wright alluded to the fact that he's not like this on off camera. Gary Neville has pointed towards it too, and I think Jamie Redknapp has probably seen enough of him in and around the makeup room in Sky or Old Trafford or Anfield or wherever they happen to go, that he knows that what we see from camera on Roy Keane isn't necessarily Roy Keane, the person off camera, and when the lights aren't on, because there is something of the performance about it.
Oh, totally. And it's amazing, you know, so often with pundits, they view the game, whichever sport it is, through the prism of their own experience. So for Keane, it's about leadership, it's about attitude. You know, and he was talking about someone just needs to smash someone. And I was kind of thinking, like, that's what he was doing in the punditry. The first 4, 5, 6 minutes post-match were so-so, and then Keane just decided to smash someone. It happened to be Tim Cahill. It could have been anyone. It wasn't personal to him. And, you know, that's almost what he was doing, an injection of oomph into the post-match. So that was the football yesterday. Pat Nevin's going to talk to us. We will have Brian Kerr as well. Quick word on before we get into Richie's Newsround on Andy Farrell and Ireland. 3 home wins, 2 defeats in London and Paris. That's generally about a par.
Yeah, on the even-numbered year, you would not expect to come away with the 2 away wins. And those 2 away wins in Twickenham and Paris tend to be the tough games. And as things have transpired post-2018, those 2 games have got a hell of a lot tougher, particularly with England. But now, as we see with France, they're setting themselves up to win the World Cup in 2023. And that squad is starting to come together nicely. It's really weird how there's been 2 completely divergent opinions on this about whether or not Ireland were unlucky to get beaten or whether they were very lucky to not get hammered completely and get beaten by a lot more than the eventual scoreline was. And I think that this is something that we've seen quite a lot over the last little while, these 2 the very glass half full and glass half empty appraisals of Irish rugby. I think Andy Farrell will be delighted that there is another competition to get stuck into immediately. I think Johnny Sexton will be delighted that there is another competition to get stuck into immediately. And I think even in context of people like who are getting a lot of stick in the media over the last little while, like you look at Mickey Hart in the GAA, Johnny Sexton getting a similar doing in the aftermath of his strop coming off the pitch the other day. There was talks about, you know, stripping the captaincy as a result of that. Again, the punishment not fitting the crime somewhat there. If it's losing a game in a straight knockout championship or having a strop after getting taken off in a game, I'm not sure if that is worth losing your job as a county manager or losing the captaincy. There have to be a greater suite of options, you would have thought, or reasons, I should say, for that eventuality to happen.
Joe, you mentioned it there, like a defeat in Paris, a defeat at Twickenham will probably be par. Like, that's the thing about this Six Nations tournament. Going into it under a new coach and with, you know, a transition being the watchword, we would have presumed that third was probably where Ireland are going to finish. Yeah. And so it's turned out to be the case. Yeah. And going into, you know, looking at that team, if we just look at it in, you know, the cold light of day, you look at that France team and particularly their halfbacks in Dupont and Entamac, and you look at ours, like an 8-point defeat to that France team, it's probably about right, and especially given the performance as well. The veering towards hyperbole and saying that everything's completely brilliant or everything's completely rubbish is probably something that can be avoided here, because I think it's probably just about right. An 8-point loss to France against that French team, and with our performance, which wasn't entirely hideous. I mean, yeah, okay, and a 3rd place in the Six Nations, hammering the teams we probably should hammer. Yeah, fair enough. I think we did okay.
I would tend to agree. We're bringing in the big guns. Brian O'Driscoll, Keith Wood coming in after 8 o'clock to give their thoughts. Sorry, Eoin.
Well, just at one point, I agree with what Richie is saying there. And the one thing we also need to be probably quite conscious of is the playing pool that we have at our disposal compared to France and England. And the discourse around Jacob Stockdale as well at the weekend is an interesting one. You know, do you drop Jacob Stockdale after a couple of defensive errors? I think dropping and, you know, culling talent within that Ireland squad is probably not an option. It's about getting the most of players if our talent pool isn't going to be of the size of France or England. And maybe we need to look at things differently here to how, say, an English rugby or a France rugby fan would react to a defeat like this.
So let's kick off the news round. It is, as ever, with thanks to Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette made of what matters. And Richie, there is live Premier League this evening.
Yeah, 2 games to speak of. They're into the final 3 minutes at Craven Cottage, where it's currently Fulham 2, West Brom 0. The goals coming from Bobby Reid and Ola Aina, both in the first half. At 8 o'clock, Leeds entertain Leicester City, both sides having designs on the top 3 tonight. That game is at Ellen Road. And in the Pro 14, we have rugby on tonight as well, Joe. It's currently Cardiff Blues 7, Ulster 3. The Ulster try coming just before half-time from Michael Lowry. A penalty 2 from John Cooney for Dan McFarlane's side. Just the one try for Cardiff in the first half. And as I say, 8-7 is what Ulster lead. There's an 8:15 at Scottstown where Rhys Ruddock will captain Leinster away to the Glasgow Warriors. Cork's All-Ireland hurling qualifier with Dublin will be played at Semple Stadium. Saturday's meeting will have a 3:45 throw-in. The GEA confirmed today after that draw was made this morning. Before that, Clare will take on Laois at Nolan Park from 1:15. The winners of those games will advance to the second round draw with Tipperary and Wexford, who both received a bye following this morning's draw. Tip had to content themselves with the backdoor route as Limerick were too good for them at Porky Queeve last night. John Kiley's side ran out 323 to 217 winners, but his opposite number, Liam Sheedy, wasn't blaming a lack of march sharpness in their defeat.
You know, we've trained for the last number of weeks and trained very well and trained very hard, and you know, we just didn't really bring our performance to an acceptable level on the pitch today, and I think the lads are gutted about that, and so am I. So you know, we've got a short window to try and turn it around. Like that is a very, very good a good Limerick team. You know, they're going now into a Munster final again after winning the Munster final last year. They're back-to-back league titles, but you know, on our side we're just not happy with the way we came to the pitch today, and we've got to try and turn that around. And you know, as I said, the healing process has to start quickly because you don't get long to turn it around here, but you know, turn it around we will, and as I said, we'll try and get back at it again Tuesday.
Even pre-match Owen Henry Shefflin was saying Limerick are so good he felt Tip would have to score at least 3 goals to keep pace with them yesterday. They are looking awesome, Limerick.
Absolutely unbelievable. It's quite hopeful if you want a good battle coming down the line in the championship this year, that Galway look like they're back to a good level this year, because it does seem that, you know, styles make fights, and their style in particular is the only thing that might be able to take Limerick down the line, because they have the mountains of men everywhere in that centre third to be able to take on this Limerick side. Kilkenny obviously have it as well, although they almost got pipped on Saturday night. Like, you almost look at those two as the options to take down Limerick, because it just seems Limerick have such control over Tipperary in this specific rivalry. They will be hoping for the exact same outcome as last year, which is somebody does Liam Sheedy a favour and knocks Limerick out for them, because they may have phenomenal hurlers, but it's just the size of this Limerick team. They're bigger than they were before the pandemic. They've used their time off well. And Kieran Carey this morning, comparing them potentially to the Dubs in football and the dynasty that they were and still are, I should say.
John Kiley with his head in his hands. Kieran, for the love of God.
Exactly. So, that is how highly thought of they are inside their own county.
Paul has texted in. Joe, you mentioned the pitch services there. The pitch service in Cork yesterday for Limerick Tip, an example of how a well-maintained pitch can perform. Unfortunately, many provincial grounds do not have the budget or the knowledge to prepare pitches in such a fashion. No, it's true. And it does cost a lot of money.
Yeah, so that cost them a pretty penny down in Porky Queeve as well, you have to remember.
And they took their time. They didn't crack it first time round. They had to relay the pitch and do things properly. So we heard from Liam Sheedy there. We also have Davy Fitz.
Yeah, Sheedy was slightly more pragmatic about Tip's defeat than Wexford manager David Fitzgerald on their 127 to 17 point loss to Galway in the Leinster semi-finals. He spoke to our Valerie Wheeler.
I suppose in the first time in 3 and a bit years I've been with Wexford, we didn't fight. We threw in the towel, that's the bottom line. And I have to apologise to the Wexford people, because we're not like that, and we let them down today. We didn't perform, and we hold our hands up because we were absolutely terrible. We were shocking. And any team you go out over, you want them to fight and do whatever. We didn't do it today. And that's not good enough as far as I'm concerned.
Why was that, Davy? What do you think the difference was? Was there any different in preparation, or can you put your finger on it yet?
I'd love to tell you. I don't know. I don't know why that was. Like the first 20 minutes we were in it, we probably had 2 or 3 goal chances. We retaliated when we shouldn't have retaliated. But they're small things. As the game went on, they won the 50-50 battles more. And the thing that's most annoying for me is we didn't push in the last 15 or 20 minutes. We put up the white flag and we just saw the game out, and that is very disappointing. There's no point hiding when you have a performance like that. You man up and you say it as it is, and that's how we were. And that's it in the story. Yeah,
there we are. Aisling O'Reilly with the questions there to Davy. I mean, Owen, he's doing one thing here and one thing only, you suspect. He's talking to his own players.
It was remarkable how they managed to fall away after 15 minutes in that game at the weekend. I had actually sent off a couple of WhatsApps on Saturday night saying, this is it. Finally, we're getting a hurling game that is going to be an absolute epic, because it had started off like that. And then Wexford just seemed to disappear. My tendency is to give Galway a bit more credit than that they're getting. As I've mentioned, I think that their physicality is something that they've also gone to a whole new level with over the last little while, and can actually contend for this All-Ireland. But if Davy is saying that about his own players, you know that they're not up to scratch in terms of that performance at the weekend. And we all expected so much last year. They will feel so hard done by after what happened last year, coming so close against Tipperary, who eventually went on to win the All-Ireland. And I don't know, it felt like this year was Davies' one last hurrah. Again, if things don't go well for him over the next couple of weeks, is he saying, right, one last hurrah, but let's do it on a proper year potentially. All these things must be up in the air, and you can't be too critical for any team for underperforming at the moment. But Wexford didn't give a good representation of themselves on Saturday night.
He is counting his blessings that, unlike Mickey Hart, he gets a second chance. That would be a tough one to sit on. Lads, is it not time, wonders Sheahan in Dublin, to drop Sexton and try and build a squad without him? I don't think so. Until you've identified the man who is definitely going to be in pole position come 2023, I don't see why you would get rid of Sexton. He is still the best out half we have available, with all due respect to Ross Byrne, who hasn't put Sexton under pressure at Leinster yet, and obviously Joey Carbery's situation is worrying and continues to be so. Jack Carty's off the back of a World Cup. I think until you identify who that person is, why would you get rid of Sexton at this stage? We'll talk to Brian O'Driscoll and Keith Wood post 8 o'clock, all and any text to 53106 or get us at Off the Ball on Twitter. Lads, you see who's in studio this evening for Sky Sports? Yeah. Who'd have thought Mauricio Pochettino? Mauricio Pochettino. Dear, oh dear. That does, Eoin, look a touch. I mean, well, OK, let's be fair. It's not like they booked him or he agreed to do it yesterday at 6:30. He was booked before United lost. But, I mean, if ever there was a weekend Ole Gunnar Solskjaer didn't want Poch looking handsome, well-rested in his suit, just pointing out where United may have got a few things wrong, this would probably not be the Monday.
Yeah, see, and that is the thing with Pochettino, is that, what is the other club that Pochettino wants to manage in the Premier League, like realistically, over the next little while? Like, you just can't see a big enough job for Pochettino coming up in the medium term that he actually wants, which just narrows the crosshairs even further after that defeat. You are right, they've been advertising this thing like mad for the last 4 or 5 days, so this is just a happy coincidence for them. But immediately, you can see that, I assume by now, they've already asked the question, is he interested in going back into management? They don't even need to ask it. If you're doing Monday Night Football, you are interested in managing in the Premier League once again.
I can't quite, and maybe Pat Nevin will do this a bit more for us after 9, or maybe Manchester United fans have a few, but it is hard to balance up, the terrible Premier League form with outstanding Champions League form. You know, like, he whooped Leipzig, and I heard David Myler this morning, he was making the point that Leipzig threw in the towel a touch, and I would accept that. There was definitely a sheen to the scoreboard, but still, they're Champions League semi-finalists just this year. So beat Leipzig comfortably, go to Paris, do a number on PSG. I mean, there's got to be some credit in the bank, no?
Well, the mentality is all over the gaff. It's still a question that there are, like, without wanting to go all Roy Keane on it, there probably are a couple of people in there who, you know, aren't necessarily as 100% focused as they should be on a game-to-game basis. And secondly, it's something I mentioned last, I guess, in morning was on the TV. Like, he doesn't know his best starting 11. He doesn't know his best system. So how can he possibly have any consistency in terms of results if he doesn't know from a game-to-game basis how best to put out his team? He's got players that he doesn't need. He's got, you know, an overabundance of number 10s, as Solskjaer, in that team. He's got a midfield who are functional behind that, but probably no more than that. And a defence that are leaky as hell whenever pressure is put on them. So, like, there are numerous problems there. And yes, the Champions League results, just by sheer quirk of performance or lack thereof from their opposition in the last couple of weeks, have been decent. But going forward, I think it was Daniel Storey put out the stat this morning saying that United under Solskjaer in his 2 years in charge are 7th in the Premier League table, and the teams either side of them, I think in 5th, 6th and 8th, have all sacked their manager during that time.
And this was, you say, as you mentioned yesterday on the TV, check you out, huh?
Sure, look at
Ireland. Listen to you.
I know. Well, sure, listen, I am to Ireland AM what Jimmy McGee was to Ireland matches in the World Cup.
So, well, you have some Mickey Hart for us then.
I do indeed, yeah. Sheedy, more pragmatic, as we mentioned there. Mickey Hart's 18th season in charge of the Tyrone footballers came to an end with that 113-111 loss to Donegal. Hart wouldn't be drawn, funnily enough, in his future after the game, but he was plenty happy to talk about how he saw Donegal's defence and their treatment of Conor McKenna.
Well, marshalled is a very... that's a strange word to call it that. Marshalled sounds like a job well done. If we'd watching what was happening in the first half there, I don't think that was marshalling. I think that was manhandling, and I don't think he got the protection he deserved from the officials. So, marshalled, yeah, maybe you call it that. I would call it worse than that.
I mean, Mickey Hart, who has never, not once, stood over a defender crossing the line. I mean, that is just beautiful. Before you go, Rich, just bring us, was it Alan Quinlan this morning?
It was, yeah. He was on and defending Jonathan Sexton's reaction to being substituted in Paris on Saturday night. The Ireland captain made way for the aforementioned Ross Byrne in the second half of that 35-27 defeat to France. And his reaction to the substitution has led some to question his role as captain. But Quinlan said this morning that he understands where Sexton was coming from.
If I could just say quickly before, I know we're out of time, but I thought the reaction to Johnny Sexton being taken off and everyone saying that he showed bad leadership is absolute rubbish. I think he showed exactly what you want right across the board. I know at times he can be criticised for his reactions, but he's frustrated, and I have no issue with that. So I just want to say that I have no issue with his reaction coming off, and that's the way he should be.
Is it not disrespectful to Ross Byrne? Like all that stuff about...
What do you want him to do? Start hugging Ross Byrne?
I want him to get off as quick as possible, because the coach has made the decision to say, I think my job is to win this game, and in my judgment, because I know the squad better than everybody else, I'm taking you off because you're not doing what I want you to do, and actually putting Ross Byrne on gives us a better chance of winning here.
Well, I don't think he deserved to be taken off. So for me, he's entitled to that reaction.
Are you? Because that's like...
Yeah, you are. You are, Joe.
But then, is that not lawlessness, Alan? Is that not the whole point, where literally everybody can start huffing and puffing? And what's the whole point? So next time he's in the huddle as captain, saying we're going to go out there and we're going to do this for each other. Is Ross Byrne not looking at him going, you don't mean that? You're going to throw your toys out of the pram if I get subbed on for you.
Yeah, good chat this morning. And Eoin, where are you on that one?
Well, as I say, I think that there is going to have to be a discussion around Sexton's captaincy once again before next year's Six Nations. Right now, though, before this Nations Cup over the next little while, I don't think it's up for debate. I think you have to see out the calendar year, and I think that, as I say, the punishment wouldn't necessarily fit the crime if it's his body language. It has to be based on his performances, and if he's not putting it in, whatever, privately in training, or if they feel he's not a good enough communicator with the referee. I think they're all legitimate concerns. But my point here is that if you're going to take the captaincy off Johnny Sexton, you can't do it for the strop that he pulled on Saturday night, in my opinion. I just don't. I think that's not fair enough. But I do think you can make a case at this point that perhaps he could better focus his attention elsewhere outside of being captain. Maybe that's a theory you could throw out there at this point in his career. The body's not getting any younger, and potentially that's how you get the best out of Sexton next year, and also maybe gets the best out of someone like James Ryan next year if he is picked as your captain for the majority of the next decade. Who knows what that might do for him, for his own confidence, and for the team going through the next couple of years. It's a very sensitive subject, and taking that off Sexton isn't going to go down well immediately. I think it's probably off the table until the new year.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair summation. OTB AM tomorrow morning, what do you got for us?
Potch Watch tomorrow morning. Maurizio Pochettino, whatever he says, we'll have you covered on that front without question. So who knows? He could be the new Manchester United manager in 12 hours.
If Potch Watch doesn't have its own jingle by tomorrow morning, Tommy Rooney's just not trying.
Yeah, basically.
Eoin Sheahan, thanks a million. Richie McCormack, as ever. I'll talk to you tomorrow, Rich.
Cheers, man.
We have Enda McGinley coming up next. Brian O'Driscoll and Keith Wood after 8.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette. Proud supporters of Movember. Gentlemen, let's mow.
Hello, Micheál O'Meara here.
And I'm Sonia O'Sullivan.
We're getting better at talking about our